Hello and welcome to my video series on the Modular Breeding Program Simulator. In this video I will present the basic functionality of our Compare Projects module to compare breeding programs. For this we will consider the breeding program Simple Cattle that's also available as a template in our interface. So when looking at this basic breeding program, we see that we have set up a breeding program with 3 traits: milk, fat and protein percentage, have some correlations entered, have some selection indices, and a very basic breeding program with a high selection on the male side, and on the female side basically nothing going on. To compare projects we first have to simulate them, and for this I would always recommend to run multiple iterations of a given breeding program. For this I'm first activating advanced settings, and here I will activate parallel computing and multiple simulations. Via this I can now select how often each simulation to run. So for this, just to be fast, I will enter just run 10 simulations and run 5 of them in parallel with just 1 core per simulation. This is basically all set up, and I will now press the start simulation run. If this was all a bit too fast for you, you can always look at those templates yourself and make yourself more familiar with those. In this video I will not go into details for that. So as you can see now, our background server is now running to execute those simulations, and we are here informed on the state of the simulations. So via scrolling down here, we see that simulations 1 to 5 are started, and we are getting this output for the first simulation in this log file. It now stated that the first simulation is finished. This one took 27 minutes, 27 seconds. The other ones afterwards were started and now it's already done. So our simulation for this basic simple cattle breeding program is done. Next up we need a project to compare this to, and for this I'm first generating a copy of this breeding program with a different name. So let's call it Simple Cattle Index. Now we have a copy of the project with a different name, and now we have to make some changes which are interesting to us. So in this case I would suggest to just switch up the selection index from this default index that's set up to have equal weight on milk, fat and protein, to the index milk increase, which has 5 index points on milk and only 1 index point on fat and protein. So when looking in our breeding program, the selection step from bulls to selected bulls, when looking at this edge, I'm editing this edge and here switching the used selection index to the one I want to use, so this milk increase. These are all the changes I want to do, so I will now save our breeding program and execute our simulations. So same procedure as for the last breeding program. This will probably take around a minute again. Nothing too crazy going on here. So the first 5 simulations are already done again, and the next ones are started. So the simulations are done. And afterwards we could now generate plots for each of the graphs themselves via the regular plot functions, but what I want to show here now is to use our compare project functionality. So I'm pressing here and I'm redirected to a different page in which I can select projects I want to compare against. So I want to compare the project Simple Cattle with the project Simple Cattle Index. In my list of projects here is extremely long, as I've already run quite a few simulations. If that's too long for you, you can also just filter out specific programs you're interested in, or just tell the tool only display those which include the text simple. And as you can see here, it's now much easier to find the programs. Next up, I can tell the tool how many different iterations to compare against. Especially for larger populations, this is mostly computational advantages to set a lower number here. For now, I will just compare all 10 runs. Next up, I run one of our analysis functions, so for example the true genomic values of our individuals. And here I can now select which cohorts I want to compare, and for each cohort I can select here is first the name of the project I'm using and next the cohort considered. So for example, we could look at Simple Cattle, our new cows, and compare those to the Simple Cattle Index project, the new cows here. And after this, generate the plot. We can now see that by increasing weight on milk, we are now obtaining higher genomic gains for milk. Those differences are my intuition would have been that those increases would even be higher, but okay. Let's see further. In terms of fat, we see that we have some, as you would also expect, that now that there's less weighting on fat percentage, then we have less improvements here, and same for protein. If you were also interested in confidence intervals, you could also tell the tool display 97% confidence intervals and now get more information on this. Those confidence intervals are generated for the average or the expected average. So by running more and more simulations, you could shrink the size of those confidence intervals even further. Similar to this, we could also generate plots for the different other types of analysis functions we are providing. But as inbreeding coefficients with different selection indices are probably not as interesting, I will skip on this. Now that I think about it, the relatively small differences in gain in milk and relative high losses in fat are probably due to the high correlations of the different traits. So if you're returning to our simulations themselves and load in the Simple Cattle project, when here looking at genomic correlations, we see that there's a relatively high correlation between milk, fat and protein, so that those relatively small differences should be expected. And with this, I already want to come to a close. And thank you for your attention, and I'm always happy for suggestions of new videos to generate to give you more of an overview about our R package and our web interface.